The programs that we've created up to this point have behaved the same way every single time that we've run them. And so in this tutorial, I'd like to show you how to include a little bit of logic in your program so that the behavior changes depending on what it is that the user's typed in. So again, we're using Java and we're using the IDE Eclipse. So I'll click OK. And again, it's going to remember where we last left off. So part of this is a review, but it's a good practice. So I'll come over here and right-click, and let's close this project. I right-click again, and let's say a new Java project, and we'll just call this one Project 3, and finish that out. Again, we can open this up. I can right-click on the project and say that we want a new class. We'll call it driver, just like we've done last time. And then we'll type in the skeleton, public static void main string args, opening and closing curly brace. Okay, so let's create a program that prompts the user for their age and then prints different things out depending on what it is that they've typed in. So we'll type system.out.println. Actually, let's use print, and we'll ask them, please enter your age, followed by a semicolon. And the next thing that we need to do is to read in some kind of user input, and we need to store that into a variable. So to do that, I'll create a scanner here called number scanner, and that gets a new scanner, passing it system.in. There we go. So in looking at the code right now, you can see that we have an error with scanner and that it doesn't recognize what that is. So I can mouse over that and click import, and it adds this import statement there. So the next thing that we need to do is to store the information that the user's typing in. So we'll create a float called age gets number scanner dot next float. We'll finish that out. Now you may be asking why we've used a float instead of an int, and that depends on whatever it is that you're trying to read. We've used ints up to this point, so I wanted to use something different, and this also allows some flexibility with what it is that the user types in. Perhaps they are 5.5 years old or 5.5 years old, something like that. Okay, so the program itself is not very exciting right now, so let's do something with the information that we have. So I might say something like, if age is less than 10, then we can do something. Now look at the structure of what we've done. We say if, so we're doing a condition here, and we have to check something that's going to resolve to true or false. In this case, age is either less than 10 or it's not less than 10, and that's going to give us something that's true or false. Also notice that I've included curly braces. This is just good practice. It's not absolutely required, but it's a really good thing. So if this thing resolves to true, what's going to happen is everything between this curly and this closing curly is going to execute. In fact, it's also a good idea to start to label some of these closing curlies, because you can see that we have 3 in a row. So in this case, I'll put a little comment here to say if. That's the end of the if. This one is the end of main. And this one right here is the end of our class. Okay, so what are we going to do if the age that they've typed in is less than 10? Well, we'll do something simple. How about system.out.println, wow, you're young. There we go. Okay. And then right here after this, we'll say system.out.println, thank you. Okay, so let's run this, and when we do that, it's going to ask us to save our changes, and we have a couple different things that we could enter. So how about my age would be, let's say, 35. When I print this, you can kind of trace through the code, and you can see that this is going to be false, because the age 35 is not less than 10. So you might ask yourself what's going to happen, and when I do that, notice that it just says thank you. So regardless of whatever happens here in this if statement, this line 15 is still going to execute. Let's try running that again. I'll come over here, please enter your age. Let's try 5. And when I do this, now you can see, wow, you're young prints, because 5 is less than 10. And it's going to execute this line 12 right here. And then no matter what, we have thank you at the very end. Okay, now we can extend this out a little bit. So I could say if the age is less than 18, Then we could say system.out.println. How about you're young, but not that young. Now, there's a problem with what we're doing here, and it's intentional, but I wanted to show you what's going to happen. So if we were to type in, let's run it here real quick. If we were to type in the age, let's say 13, it behaves the way that we expect it. It's going to say you're young, but you're not that young, and then it says thank you. It has to say thank you every time. Okay? The problem comes with our logic. If I were to run this again, and let's say I type in the age of 8, it says, wow, you're young, and then it says you're young, but you're not that young, and that really doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, why is this happening? Because age in this example is going to be 8 years old. So is 8 less than 10? Yes, it is. This resolves to true. So what's going to happen is system.out.println wow, you're young is going to execute. And then it drops down here to the test at line 15. And because 8 is less than 18, it's also going to print out you're young, but you're not that young. So it doesn't really make sense in this case to print out both things. To handle this, we can use another version of this, and I can say else if. Now when we get into a series of else if statements, it's going to select one of the following. So this is going to be true, and if it is true, it's going to kick out and it's going to drop down here to line 19. If this is not true, then it's going to go down here to 15, and it'll keep going down for as many else ifs as we have until it finds something that's true, or it could potentially not find something true and not do anything. So let's run this again and see some of the behaviors here. Enter our age. Let's make sure it still works with 8. And it says, wow, you're young, because this was true. So it didn't need to check lines 15 through 17. It skipped over that and went straight here to line 19 and then printed out thank you. If I run it again, please enter your age. Let's try 13. And you can see that this was false. The test at line 11 was false, that is. And then here on line 15, it did continue to check there. It sees that 13 is less than 18, and then it prints out you're young but not that young. Finally, it prints out thank you. Okay, so we can continue this any number of times. I could say else if age is less than 21. Then we might say something like system.out.println you're too young to drink. And just to test this out, we could type in the age of, let's say, 19. And when I do this, it says you're too young to drink. And again, it fell through all of these statements that we had previously, the if and the else if. And then you might say, well, we could continue this out and say else if age is greater than or equal to 21, then we could do something else. Well, that would cover just about everything that we haven't checked for up to this point. But there's also a shortcut version of this. So what I'm going to do is just say else print system.out.println welcome to adulthood. Okay, so this is the catch-all. If all of these statements here fail and they've been false, then the else will execute. So we're guaranteed that something here between lines 11 and 23, something is going to print, followed by line 25 down here with a thank you. So let's test this out to make sure it works. So what is our age? Let's try 21. And you can see it says welcome to adulthood. The else actually executed in that case. So that's a look at if statements and else if statements and this else statement. And so hopefully you get a better sense about how these things work.